Welcome to Israel Now News. I'm Shanna Fold.
And I'm Yochanan El-Rom.
In our top story, tensions remain high in Israel following a series of Palestinian terror attacks. Defense Minister Yoav Gallant is vowing to act decisively and forcefully against anyone who threatens Israel's citizens. He said every terrorist will either go to court or to the cemetery. The defense chief is stressing that anyone who helps the terrorists will be harmed. Additional army units have been deployed to beef up security in Judea and Samaria.
One of the recent terrorist attacks was carried out by a 13-year-old Arab boy. Some have asked what would cause this young man to steal a relative's pistol and then take to the streets to try and murder Jews. Investigators believe teenage terrorist Mohammed Alawite may have been brainwashed by hate-filled anti-Semitic incitement in his school books. Alawat, a resident of the Silwan neighborhood, shot and wounded a father and son near the city of David in Jerusalem. He was quickly neutralized by one of his intended victims. Researchers with Impact SE, the Institute for Monitoring Peace and Cultural Tolerance in School Education, examined Palestinian Authority textbooks used by the 8th grader. What they discovered was shocking. The books promote the killing of Jews. His reading comprehension course contained a story encouraging suicide bombings in which Palestinians cut the necks of enemy soldiers and wore explosive belts. Another PA book teaches that martyrdom brings honor and glory and guarantees entry to heaven. Children are taught that those who do not sacrifice themselves are weak.
Iran's military workshop in the city of Isfahan was attacked by drones. International intelligence officials say Israel carried out the strike. The Jerusalem Post, Wall Street Journal, and New York Times reported that unnamed sources said it was the work of the Mossad. Jerusalem is neither admitting nor denying involvement. The factory produces Iran's Shahed 136 killer drones that Tehran is selling to Russia for use in its war against Ukraine. However, the facility also manufactures medium-range missiles that can reach Israel.
Israeli President Isaac Herzog traveled to Brussels recently, where he held talks with NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg. The Israeli head of state urged the NATO chief to take a stronger stance toward Iran. Herzog said Tehran's aid to Russia in its war against Ukraine is evidence that the Iranian threat is now at Europe's doorstep. Herzog called on NATO to confront Iran through economic, legal, and political sanctions, along with a credible military deterrence. The Israeli president said this is critical for the stability of the Middle East, for Europe, and the world.
There are some disturbing findings coming out of a recent survey from the Netherlands. Nearly a quarter of Dutch millennials believe the Holocaust is a myth or greatly exaggerated. Overall, almost a third of the 2,000 people interviewed claimed the number of Jews murdered was less than 2 million, and a majority of Dutch respondents across all age groups did not know their own country was a place where the Holocaust occurred, despite the fact nearly 75% of Dutch Jews were killed during the Holocaust, one of the highest rates in Europe. Officials said it's obvious that more needs to be done in the field of Holocaust education.
A special Holocaust display has been unveiled at the United Nations in New York. The exhibit, called the Book of Names, contains 4.8 million names of the 6 million dead that the researchers from the Yad Vashem Holocaust Memorial in Jerusalem have identified. Blank pages are included for the 1.2 million or more victims whose names have not been recovered. The display stands over 6 feet tall and more than 26 feet long. The names are arranged alphabetically and with basic information about the victims, including their year of birth, hometown, and place of death. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said the exhibition is a call to remembrance, to remember each child, woman, and man who perished in the Holocaust as a human being with a name and a future that was stolen.
The medical community has been warning us for years about the danger of antibiotic resistance, a situation that occurs when antibiotics no longer work in treating bacterial infections. It's estimated that in 2019, 1.2 million people died from these so-called superbugs. The World Health Organization considers this phenomenon to be one of the biggest threats to global health. Now, Israeli scientists at Ben Gurion University have developed a substance that overcomes antibiotic resistance by pricking bacteria to death. Nofar Yehuda, one of the researchers, told the Times of Israel that the key ingredient is polysaccharides, long chains of carbohydrate molecules derived from sea algae. The polysaccharides are mixed with tiny copper particles, creating nanoneedles, which are just 1 micron high. These spikes poke holes in the membranes of bacteria, causing it to die. Ben Gurion University has patented the substance and hopes to commercialize it soon.
A mysterious handprint was discovered carved into a 1,000-year-old dry moat that surrounded Jerusalem's Old City during recent excavations of defensive fortifications. Archaeologists with the Israel Antiquities Authority believe the deep, rock-hewn moat dates back to at least the 10th century. So what does the handprint mean? Well, officials with the IAA say they're not sure. The moat is 33 feet wide and 6 to 23 feet deep. It encircled all of Jerusalem at the time. It was built to prevent enemies from breaking into the city and invading. Unlike moats that were filled with water surrounding many European castles, the Jerusalem moat was dry, but it still would have slowed down an approaching army.
A nature reserve in Israel is working to repopulate a species of ostrich that has almost become extinct. The North African ostrich, or red-necked ostrich, once inhabited the entire periphery of the Sahara. Unfortunately, increased hunting for the rare bird's feathers, meat, and eggs has resulted in a dramatic decrease in their population over the last 50 years. The Haibar Nature Reserve in southern Israel has joined an international campaign to save this dying species. Recent DNA tests of ostriches at Haibar revealed they are almost identical to the endangered birds in Senegal. Haibar established an artificial hatchery and has bred 30 red-necked ostrich eggs to restore the waning population in the West African country.
It has taken nearly 5 years, but the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons has finally issued a statement blaming the Syrian Air Force for bombing the city of Douma with cylinders filled with chlorine gas. The attack in April of 2018 killed 43 people. Fernando Arias, the Director General of the OPCA, said this is clearly a breach of international law. This is not the first time that the regime of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad has been accused of using chemical weapons during his country's devastating civil war. However, prosecutors are not optimistic about bringing the perpetrators to justice because Syria's ally Russia has blocked efforts by the International Criminal Court to open an investigation.
Former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee was honored at this year's Israel Allies Foundation Gala Awards dinner in Miami, Florida. Huckabee is well respected by some of the Jewish community and some Bible-believing Christian communities for his commitment to his faith and the manner in which he defended Israel throughout his time serving as governor of Arkansas and during his 2 presidential campaigns. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis sent a video message congratulating the honoree for his steadfast commitment to Israel. The event was attended by prominent Jewish and Christian leaders from the United States and Canada. IAF President Josh Reinstein used the occasion to announce the launch of the 51st Caucus in the Israel Allies Network, which will be forming in the Congress of the Dominican Republic. And in a related matter, the Israel Allies Foundation, along with the Combat Anti-Semitism movement, played host to lawmakers from 10 Latin American countries. The legislators were given guidance on how to translate their support for Israel into real political action. They also drafted and signed a resolution that calls for the study, adoption, and implementation of the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance's working definition of anti-Semitism. That concludes the news portion of our show. Stay tuned for Ask the Source with Josh Reinstein.
Hello and welcome to Ask the Source. I'm your host Josh Reinstein and we're here in our beautiful studio in Jerusalem. My guest today is Rabbi Tuly Weisz. He's the founder of Israel 365. Rabbi Weisz, thank you for being on the show.
Great to be here.
Tell our viewers a little bit about what is Israel 365.
Israel 365 is a daily connection to Israel for people all over the world. And it's based on the verse in Deuteronomy that says, God's eyes are upon Israel every day from the beginning of the year until the end of the year. And Israel 365 wants to allow people to connect with Israel, also to be like God every day of the year.
Well, you do a lot of really interesting things. You have news, you have products, you have initiatives. Tell us a little about some of those activities.
So we have like you said, the news, which is from a biblical perspective. So a lot of the things here in Israel are being portrayed and misportrayed by the mainstream media, mainly because they're looking at it with a very narrow angle. And we try to look at the news from a biblical perspective. And to really understand Jerusalem, you have to understand why it's so important to the Jewish people and why it's so important to God. We also have a Bible, our own Israel Bible, which again is the Hebrew scriptures with a commentary throughout each chapter all about the land of Israel, the people of Israel, and the God of Israel. We have a lot of other initiatives, but everything is connected to the Bible.
Well, you're an Orthodox Jewish rabbi, but the whole activity of Israel 365 is directed at the evangelical Christian community. Why was that important for you?
So that's a great question. I didn't have a lot of exposure to Christians growing up, like most Jews, right? And it was only later in my career as a rabbi in Columbus, Ohio, that I met evangelical Christians who loved Israel more than the Jews loved Israel. And so I realized how important it was to be building bridges between our two communities. And I realized that we have so much more, Jews and Christians have so much more in common than what divides us. And we needed to continue to develop and nurture those relationships.
You mentioned the Bible that you put out, and it really is a great resource. It's really phenomenal. But what's interesting is that Christians are really coming back to their Jewish roots, and they're interested in a Jewish Bible. Why is that so important for them to learn about their Jewish roots?
Well, a lot of Christians also are reading their scripture, they're reading the New Testament without realizing that there was a prequel, right? That there was something that came beforehand. So much of the New Testament is based on the Tanakh, the Hebrew Bible. And so we're trying to give a more comprehensive perspective, and a lot of Christians who are interested, who appreciate Israel and who are interested in exploring their Jewish roots of their faith in order to be a better Christian, are looking to learn Hebrew, are looking to connect with Israel and the Jewish people, and are looking to learn the Tanakh, and are looking to read the Bible from a Jewish perspective.
Now, you're a Jewish rabbi, and your job is to teach Jewish people about the Bible, but now you're teaching also Christians about the Bible. How do those two things differ?
So Jews are a lot more argumentative, and when Jews read the Bible, we fight over how to interpret it. That's actually part of the tradition. Every word could be interpreted in many, many ways. And so in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Well, what do we mean by in the beginning? And we encourage our children to ask a lot of questions. And I think that when Christians study from that perspective, they realize that everything is holy and we need to get to the bottom of every word and every letter of the Bible. And they are encouraged to ask a lot of questions. And I think that Christians really love that approach.
So you were a rabbi in America, and then you made Aliyah, you moved to Israel, you're now a rabbi here in Israel. How does that differ? Is being a rabbi in Israel different than being a rabbi anywhere in the world, or is it really the same? Once you're a rabbi, you're a rabbi.
Well, I think that being a Jew is very different in Israel versus outside of Israel. Being a Jew in Israel is like being a fish in water. Being a Jew outside of Israel is like being a fish out of water. And so when the Jewish people come and are reunited with our land, our neshama, our soul, comes to life in very special ways, spiritual ways. And you see here the prophecy coming to life on every street corner or in every newspaper article. And so I think that so many of the Jewish people outside of America are looking for ways to connect to their spirituality. But in Israel, we're connected to the land, and it's so much more natural. And so I know that it's been a tremendous blessing for me and for my family over the last 11 years since we've moved here. Every Jew who I know in America is, in one way or another, considering moving to Israel now. With the increase in anti-Semitism, everyone is thinking about moving to Israel and making Aliyah, which of course is the most natural thing in the world.
Tuly, there are literally tens of millions of people watching this show. What message do you have for our viewing audience?
The main message for Christians who are watching this is to pray for Israel. It's the one place in the world that God demands our prayers. However, we also need more than your prayers, and we need you to come and visit. Israel is being attacked left and right, and only when you come here yourself do you realize how amazing it is here, how beautiful it is here, and how the prophecies are coming to life. It will change your life when you come to Israel, and so everyone should think about when and how they could get over here and come and visit us.
Thank you, Rabbi Tuly, for being on the show. And thank you for tuning in to Ask the Source. I'm your host, Josh Reinstein. Now back to the studio.
Up next, the return to Zion with Karen Hayesod.
Shalom and welcome to the Return to Zion with Karen Hayesod. I'm Sam Grundwerg, World Chairman of Karen Hayesod, the leading official fundraising organization for the State of Israel. Israel is once again a light unto the nations since its creation. Let's watch together and marvel in what God has been able to do in such a short period of time.
In just a few short years from now, for the first time since the destruction of the Second Temple, more Jews will once again be living in Israel than in the rest of the world combined. This incredible milestone is a testament to the truth of God's prophecy, the determination of the Jewish people, and the hard work of Karen Hayesod, which for the past 90 years has dedicated itself to returning the Jewish people home. After the Roman army ransacked Jerusalem in 70 AD, the Jewish nation was scattered throughout the four corners of the earth. But each generation kept faith and dreamed of returning to their ancient home. If I forget you, O Jerusalem, may my right hand forget her skill. May my tongue cling to the roof of my mouth if I do not remember you. Over the centuries, a tiny remnant of Jews constantly remained. By 1800, just 24,000 lived in their homeland, while untold millions built Jewish lives across the globe. Throughout the following 2 centuries, the ingathering of the Jewish people gradually became reality. In the land of Abraham and of King David's ancient kingdom, the Jewish people finally fulfilled Jeremiah's prophecy. There is hope for your future. Your children will return to their borders. The first wave of Jews arrived in the late 19th century, mainly from Russia and Yemen, pioneering some of modern Israel's most familiar cities. Soon before the First World War, they were joined by Jews fleeing the pogroms of Tsarist Russia. They founded the very first kibbutz and revived the ancient biblical language as modern Hebrew. During the 1920s, as Europe was reshaped in the aftermath of war, Jews continued to find refuge in the Holy Land, fleeing from growing anti-Semitism. Crucial to these efforts was the work of Karen Hayesod supporters, who had galvanized Jewish communities and their friends across the world in an effort to see Jews return home. This was critical in helping hundreds of thousands of Jews escape the dark clouds of Europe as the horrors of Nazi Germany became a reality. By the outbreak of World War II, the Jewish population of Israel had swelled to 250,000. This number swiftly grew during the late 1940s as the survivors of humanity's darkest hour headed to the only place they could call home. As the world reeled from the shock of Nazism, Jews were forced to flee persecution once more, this time from the Middle East and North Africa, with around 900,000 Jews expelled or forcibly removed from Arab countries between 1948 and 1970. They arrived destitute in the fledgling state of Israel, eventually playing a major role in its development. Israel has continued determinedly to rescue Jews from danger. Tens of thousands of Ethiopian Jews were airlifted to safety in the 1980s and early 1990s. In the following years, as the Soviet Union collapsed, almost 1 million Jews made the journey to Israel. With the help of Keren Hayesod supporters, they have made new lives in the land of their forefathers. 2 millennia after the Roman destruction, we believe more Jews will soon once again be living in Israel than outside of Israel. They will be living in a thriving, independent Jewish state. Finally, as Zechariah predicted, old men and women will sit in the streets of Jerusalem, filled with boys and girls playing. Join us in making this dream a reality. Bible-believing Christians around the world have a role to play in the fulfillment of this biblical prophecy. Thus says the Lord God, "Behold, I will lift up my hand to the nations and set up my standard to the peoples, and they will bring your sons in their arms, and your daughters will be carried on their shoulders."
Let's bless Israel together.
Now's the time for you to get involved. Assist Keren Hayesod to raise the necessary funds in order to bring Jews yearning for their homeland back to Israel. Your donation can help fulfill the biblical prophecy today. To donate and get information, visit our website at www.khisrael.org.
And now, shining light from Israel.
God tells Joshua to come to Shiloh, place the tabernacle here. This becomes the center of the 12 tribes. Hi, I'm Eliana, and welcome to ancient Shiloh. We're about to embark on a journey through time. We're going to be going back 3,500 years in time to the time that this was Israel's first capital. Follow me. For 40 years, the children of Israel were wandering through the desert with Moses leading them. They crossed the Jordan with Joshua ben Nun, enter Israel, and establish Israel's first capital city here in Shiloh. For 369 years, this is the center for the 12 tribes. So how do we know that this is Shiloh? When an archaeologist comes to an ancient biblical site, they have a dream to find three things: a reference in the Bible, an inscription, and the preservation of the ancient Hebrew name. Here we found all three. Let's look at the verse in the Bible. In the book of Judges, chapter 21, verse 19. "Vayomru hinei chag Hashem b'Shiloh miyamim yamima," and there was the festival of the Lord from year to year in Shiloh, asher mitzvona leBeit El, which was north of Beit El, mizrecha hashemesh lamesila ha'ola miBeit El Shechema, east of the highway that goes from Bethel to Shechem, and on the south of Livonah. The highway we see today, the modern Highway 60, is in the exact same location as the ancient biblical highway. So that's how we know that this is Shiloh. But what's really significant about Shiloh is that the tabernacle stood here just beneath us. The tabernacle was a portable temple for the 40 years in the desert, and here it's a semi-permanent structure. Here for almost 400 years, this is where the children of Israel congregated 3 times a year and was the center for the 12 tribes. Walking through ancient Shiloh, you can feel the history. If you stand here long enough, they say that you can still smell the incense from the time of the tabernacle. I'm holding 3,500 years of history in the palms of my hand. These are pieces of pottery that belong to Jewish families that came here 3 times a year when this was Israel's capital and the site of the tabernacle. They'd offer their offerings and break the dishes. We found hundreds of pieces of pottery in our backyard, just behind me, over here. We live overlooking the site of the tabernacle. Every time I come here, every time I pick up these pieces of the pottery, it's truly exciting. If you're familiar with the story of Hannah from the book of Samuel, then you'll realize that this is where prayer began. Hannah stood here 3,500 years ago and spoke to God. Eli, the high priest, had no idea what she was doing because before that time, people would come to offer sacrifices. There was no prayer. She's granted with a child, Samuel, who grows up here in the Mishkan, here in the tabernacle, becomes a prophet, will later anoint King David and build Jerusalem. In addition to exploring the archaeology in this site, we have this beautiful museum. There's a great movie that tells the story of the biblical site. We have a beautiful picnic area. There's a gift shop. I think it's the most beautiful gift shop in Israel with unique and special gifts. They all have to do with the Mishkan, with the tabernacle, Shiloh, and Hannah. If you have more time and like to explore our beautiful region, the region of Binyamin, the Benjamin Regional Council, you can hop into an ATV, drive through the gorgeous vineyards, stop off for a swim in one of our beautiful springs, and continue on bike or hiking through the mountains. We hope to see you soon here in Shiloh and in the Binyamin region. We're waiting for you.
That's all for this edition of Israel Now News. I'm Shanna Fold.
And I'm Yochanan El Rome, reporting from our studio in Jerusalem. Please join us again next week for all of your Israel updates.